in this medium storm that has surrounded this case. His medical school yearbook. He had a photograph. There's a picture of someone in blackface and a person next to them with a Klan hood outfit. And on Friday, he said it was, that was him in the photo. The next day, he said it wasn't. People have been asking him all over the country, the senators from the state, his his lieutenant governor is a black man, Justin Fairfax. Everyone has sort of been anticipating that he would take a cue and decide to resign, but he has resisted calls to date. So to me, this is white privilege. This is like white entitlement on steroids.
But also on mainstream media, they're saying like, "Oh, it was a different time then."
No,
and all
it
this stuff.
wasn't.
I'm like, 84 was a different time where you could wear a Ku Klux Klan outfit and blackface.
In fact, our girl, our dear friend, Anoa Chunga, shared, I love that she found this, a clip from the show Give Me a Break with Nell Carter.
Yeah, I saw
Did
that.
you see that? Where Joey shows up to something in blackface, and it was the whole thing was like, this is not okay, and I guess Samantha, the other daughter, I mean, nobody in 1984 thought this was okay. That's one. Two, he in his initial press conference said that he admitted to dressing up as Michael Jackson and wearing blackface. So it's like, you've already admitted that you have poor judgment and are just racist. So, and then now you're saying it's not? I mean,
now it's Michael Jackson.
Oh, you didn't hear that part?
No, I did, but I'm like, come on.
And I saw this very brief clip, and a reporter even asked him, "Can you still moonwalk?" And he had this goofy look on his face like he was about to do it. And his wife off camera says, "This is not an appropriate circumstance." It's like,
I'm sorry for laughing. It's really not funny.
It's
just
awful. So, if you are a voter, if you are an elected official in the state of Virginia, you are rightfully just horrified that this is your governor. And, I think the timing of this is interesting. I will say this. This week actually was a really chaotic week in Virginia politics because there was, I don't even know the details of the bill, but Kathy Trenn, who was one of the Virginia delegates elected in 2017, was actually getting death threats and being attacked because there's some legislation regarding late-term abortions. And so there's been a lot of controversy these past couple of weeks. So it's not like things aren't tense. And so, but this sort of is one of those things where like, oh, but he's done all these good things. It's like, no, let's go back to the election. Some of you who were paying attention to Virginia's gubernatorial and state elections, remember a story that is being shared again, is that a union in Virginia asked Ralph Northam to leave Justin Fairfax, his lieutenant governor candidate, off of a flyer. Just so those of you who don't know, Justin Fairfax is black. He agreed to it, and so there were flyers that were printed without Justin Fairfax's name and photograph. So, I mean, that, and then I remember, for those of you who don't remember, Ralph Northam was sort of repeating Republican talking points on immigration, too. So it's not like people were saying this. Do you want to just add to that, Shauna?
I have nothing. He's done.
Well, you know what else?
Canceled, unsubscribe.
But you know what?
Retire.
Yeah, seriously. But, a lot of people who are, Bernie supporters are sort of, I told you soing, a bunch of sort of centrist folks saying you kept pushing Bernie to endorse Northam when, Tom Perello, I think it's how you say his name, was the progressive candidate in that race, and he didn't end up endorsing Northam. And all those folks are basically saying,
told you so.
Exactly. So,
but was Bernie's lack of endorsement because he knew that Northam was a racist, or what?
I think
otherwise that I told you so isn't that helpful.
That's what I'm saying. Because I'm like, hey, Bernie didn't endorse AOC either. So let's be real. Like, Bernie's lack of an endorsement or of endorsement doesn't necessarily make him like all knowing or omniscient or all powerful. It's just in this case, he maybe honestly dodged a bullet.
Plus, we know a lot of the people advising him are highly compromised.
Oh, That's a whole show. That's a whole show. But speaking of people running for president who have declared, we can switch topics back to the national since we're going to get local. We had Cory Booker announced this week, and we haven't really talked about the presidential candidates recently. So do you have thoughts about, Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, Tulsi Gabbard, Elizabeth Warren, I think, and there's a few other folks.
I just want to tell folks, do not attack people for personal reasons, that there's plenty of research that we can do and find policy issues or money that they've received or, things that we can point to that are factual. So that would be my guidance, is to definitely look into Cory Booker and Kamala, that their records don't, completely back up how they're speaking about their record right now, and just, be careful about how you speak about folks.
Yeah. And that's true really for any candidate. Same
Correct.
thing with Beto. A lot of folks super excited about him. I saw a story just the other day about him sort of slowing down the process of potentially running. But I think I think here's the thing that gets tricky, and we're going to talk about this in a future show, like future meaning either next week or the week after, how some of the attacks on Kamala Harris in particular are perceived as racist and sexist. And so we can't ignore that, because there is a history of that, right? That women candidates and women of color do get more scrutiny and more negative press. This has actually been studied. It's not to say that people should not actually look at their records and where they get their money. That's completely fair. When you put yourself in the public eye, you open yourself up to scrutiny. But let's also be clear that, like, two things can be true. You can have a bad record or have problematic things in your record, but you can also be sort of held to account more when you're a woman and a woman of color. Like, I mean, the couple of folks who seem to be completely, so excited about, say, a Joe Biden, but then as soon as you say Christian Gillibrand's name, they're like, oh, yeah, the woman who took down Al Franken. No, Al Franken took down Al Franken. I'm pretty sure Al Franken took down Al Franken. Now, I'm not going to relitigate Al Franken leaving the Senate, but the fact is he, there were 8 women came forth. You can't, whoever started it, 8 women weren't all, Fox News plants. I mean, that's where I think, in that case, I can see a clear difference in terms of how the candidates are handled. I mean, Joe Biden, frankly, has a bad record on criminal justice, on Anita Hill.
Mm-hmm,
I mean, let's talk about it.
That's a deal breaker for me.
Yeah.
For sure.
But that brings me to another point on the presidential elections and just the concept of criticizing what people might perceive, a person that people might perceive as a front runner. And what I've noticed, and you brought this up yesterday on Facebook, is a lot of folks who are on the left, who are black, are being attacked as being Russian bots because they're critical of something, whether it's Kamala Harris or some kind of establishment figure. I've seen it a number of times. Do you want to share the instance you saw, Shauna?
So, yeah, there are a couple activists that are in my network, Yvette Carnell and Antonio Moore, and their coalition is called Breaking Brown, and they're black activists. Their movement is called DOS, or Descendants of Slaves. So they're basically drawing attention to the fact that the experience of black Americans who were descendant of the slaves who built this country is different than, say, someone who did not grow up with that heritage. It's just, they're just bringing awareness. They weren't even calling out Kamala. They were just saying, is she descendant of slave? Or are they unfairly labeling her as African American? They were just asking questions about it. And now, yesterday on AM Joy, one of the pundits said to look out
Which
for
is MSNBC Joy Reid. So.
Yes.
Right.
Yesterday, one of the pundits, who's supposed to be a digital expert, I can't think of her name right now, but her Twitter handle is Digital Sista, She said to watch out for hashtag DOS or anything saying descendants of slaves because they are Russian bots. So in like one fell swoop, it sort of undermined and erased this whole movement of people. It's not just these two activists. I mean, they have a huge following of supporters, and there was like action calls and strategy calls yesterday, like how do we counter this? How do we like share what our movement really is about and, you know, not let them erase it? And the question for me is like, is this just a pundit with bad information, or is this some sort of like reaction from Kamala's campaign? Like, this is the talking point to counter any valid criticism of.
Right. Well, I've seen that specific call of attacking black critics of any Russian bots, like Amy Siskin is. She's famously on Twitter for doing this thing called The List. And she shared something a few months ago like, never in the history of our country have we ever had so much, you know, racism. And basically all these black Twitter commentators said, check yourself, Amy. You have no connection to reality.
Yeah.
And, oh, by the way, weren't you a big fan of Sarah Palin? So this woman, specifically, her handle is Angry Black Lady, Imani Gandhi, said, you know, was pointing this out to her. And Amy has a huge following. I think she might have 1 million followers. Started just, you know, going after Imani and saying, you're a Russian troll, you're a Russian bot. And so there's like this pattern of, if you are an outspoken black activist on social media, you're going to be labeled with this. There's like this, and it goes back to the Red Scare. I mean, if you think about the McCarthy era, that was not uncommon. If you were a person of color or if you had very strong progressive views, that was immediately like, you must be a communist, you must be associated with the Soviets. So it's like, it's sort of like, you know, this deja vu all over again.
So it's even worse. So they called their movement out as Russian bots on AM Joy yesterday. And then,
which is a huge platform.
Twitter has actually shut down some pages that are critical of Kamala, which one of them was at Copmala.
No. Yeah, there's a lot of handles that say Kamala Harris is a cop. Yeah, so there's a bunch of those.
Right, but that was actually shut down on Twitter.
Yeah, so I mean, so these critical voices are being silenced. Now, you don't have to agree with them, but let's be honest. We need to have discourse. We need to have an honest discussion about this. This is a big race.
Which is why me and some of my colleagues are forming an adult debate league where we actually have conference calls that are like two people speaking to opposite points of view and respectfully with factual evidence. And we think it's going to really revolutionize the discourse come 2020.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
I think we have to take a break, though, because our folks from the 40th Ward are about to jump into the studio.
So Lady B is back, and she's going to take us out to a break. You're listening to The Left. I'm Samina Mustafa.
I'm Shauna East.
And we'll be right back. I'm Samina Mustafa.
I'm Shauna East.
We're producing a show on WCPT Sundays at 1 o'clock.
What should we call it?
How about Smash the Patriarchy?
I like it, but that's a lot of pressure. What about left-leaning ladies?
What about womansplaining?
Yeah, but what about when we have guys on? What about Madigan's Worst Nightmare?
He gets enough attention.
I got it. To the left.
I like that. That could work.
Tune in to The Left with Samina and Shauna on WCPT 820, Sundays at 1.
And we are back. Thank you, Lady B, fearless producer, Lady B, repping for the White Sox.
That's right.
On the board. I'm Samina Mustafa.
Shauna East.
And you're listening to the Left on WCPT 820. We are on Facebook Live at To the Left Radio. That's all of our handles on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We have an exciting show for you. We have the candidates for the 40th Ward Aldermanic race. If you're not in Chicago or don't know where that is, it's basically parts of Edgewater, Andersonville, Lincoln Square, Budalong Woods, and I'm sure I'm forgetting something. But it's kind of northwest side of Chicago, and we're very excited to have Diane DeLayden and Ugo Carey and Andre Vasquez in the studio.
Hello.
Hey there. Hi, everyone.
Ow! So we're gonna have some fun, guys. Shauna, do you want to get everybody started?
So the first item of biz is we'd like to just go around and ask you each to introduce yourself, and you'll have 2 minutes, and I'm going to time you. So when you hear the buzzer, move on. So first, I think we have Diane DeLayden.
Hello, everyone. Is my 2 minutes on yet?
Yes, go for it.
I'm a long-term resident of the ward. I've lived here most of my life, and I ran 4 years ago for alderman and earned over 40% of the vote. It occurs to me as time goes by, things have gotten more and more difficult for working families in the city, for public employees, for private corporations, for small businesses, for everyone who calls Chicago home. I don't think things are getting easier. I really believe that it's time for change. The people want change. I think our race is evidence of wanting that change. We're running against an entrenched incumbent who has been in city council almost 36 years, and he's been floor leader for 2 mayors. It's time for us to return public money to public good. I really want the city to be a city of neighborhoods and healthy business communities, not a planned development by the corporations.
Love it. 1 minute. Nice.
Nailed it, Diane. Okay, Ugo's next.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ugo Carey, candidate for alderman of the 40th Ward. I'm an immigrant. I was born in the southern part of Nigeria, and I moved to the city of Chicago when I was just 3 months old. Come from a working-class family. My father's a taxi cab driver. My mother was at home taking care of the kids till I turned 9, where she got a job stocking fridges at W Hotels, and then was laid off during the financial crisis and got a job working just outside the city in a factory. I got my start in organizing in social justice in college, where I studied social work and political science, organizing around issues of racial justice and economic justice. And then I went on to become chairman of a community organization in the Pilsen neighborhood called Fuerza del Sol, where we're engaging in issues of violence prevention and immigrant rights. And in that time, I was also able to gain government experience working for offices like the Chicago City Clerk's office, working at the federal level for a congressional office, as well as the Chicago Federal Executive Board. And now I'm currently working as a community engagement coordinator at the Evanston City Clerk's office. And I decided to run because we're living in a city where our public school system is segregated not just by race, but also by class. We're living in a city where our black and brown residents are fearful of the Chicago Police Department. And we're living in a city where our debts and obligations are balanced in the backs of the most marginalized and working class people of this city. And we've had leadership in the 40th Ward that has done nothing to address the root causes of these issues for the past 35 years. And so that's why we're running on a platform of co-governance, which is this idea that it's not me going into city council, but that it's all of us with a seat at the table and government in our hands. Second part of the campaign is about equity, understanding that equity isn't the same thing as equal, but it's about investing in places that need it the most. And the last part of the campaign is about interconnected struggle. And that's this idea that we can't keep looking at ourselves as different sides of the city, because when we do that, we allow politicians to divide us up where we come from, what we look like, and how much money we make. This campaign has been endorsed by Chicago and National Democratic Socialists of America, and we are looking forward to building a ward for everyone and a Chicago for all. Thank you.
Thanks, Ugo. Andre?
I'm like so curious of the times. Sorry.
He was just under 2. Diane was 1.
I think we could just set the expectation.
You're
I'm like,
going.
I'm good. So my name's Andre Vasquez. I'm running to be the next alderman of the 40th Ward. I was born and raised in the city. My parents were Guatemalan immigrants. We were priced out of 5 different neighborhoods. So it went from Wicker Park, before it was Wicker Park, to North and Keeler to Belmont and Oakley to Addison and Albany to Addison and Elston. I moved into the 40th Ward when I met my wife, who was raised in the 40th. So yeah, we were priced out. I went to 4 different public schools. Basically, I was a city kid. I was a rapper for about 15 years while working retail. I went from selling cell phones at a strip mall to running my own AT&T store in Chicago and Rush. Currently, I'm an area manager in charge of services for 145,000 homes in the state of Illinois. So I hadn't thought about getting involved politically until we had our kids. I have a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old. Our daughter Avery goes to Pierce CPS. Our boy takes classes at the Park District. That got me engaged locally. It led to me becoming a community organizer. I became the chair of Reclaim Chicago North Chapter, the executive director of Chicago Progress, and really started this campaign because I think it's time to have a government that's accessible, transparent, accountable, and involves neighbors in decision making, which is not currently what happens. And the current council makes choices that leaves neighbors at a detriment. We've been endorsed by Daniel Biss, State Senator Ron Villivalum, Reclaim Chicago, People's Lobby, Brand New Council, Rhymefest, because I was a rapper, along with other organizations. And I think we've got a shot to actually change the way the city works and who it works for. So that's why I'm running.
Good time. 15 seconds to go. We're going to go ahead with the discussion part. And our first question, and each of you will have a minute to respond. We'll start with Andre. What do you think is the #1 issue in your ward that you want to address first as alderman?
Yeah, I think it's a myriad. It's what happens when you have somebody who's working for 35 years, knows how to do the bare minimum, take credit for everything, and make his money on the side. What's actually being neglected is affordable housing, local business development.
If you have to pick just one, the top issue is the question.
Affordable housing.
Okay.
Yeah, like most people can't, people that even work in the ward can't live in the ward. Affordable housing is a concept that people don't necessarily grasp in the 40th, depending where you are. Arcadia Terrace is one that I think is actually most challenged when it comes to income levels, and it's the one that's got the Barbara O'Connor billboard right outside on Peterson and Western. Like, and my concern is that what they're going to end up doing is turning those 2 flats into single-family homes, raising the price, raising taxes, and ultimately pricing people out. As someone who's had that happen my whole life, I see it coming, and I think it's a serious concern, not only for the ward, but for the city.
Great. Ugo?
I also believe the #1 concern in the 40th Ward is the lack of affordable housing. When I've lived in the ward since I was 9 years old, and when I'm knocking on doors and I'm talking to people about their experiences and the way that they've seen the ward change, a lot of them say they don't like the way that it's changed. There was a man who I met who had been in the ward for 20 years. When he first moved in, he could name every single person on his block, and about 10 years later, he can only name 3. And it's not because these people decided to leave on their own. It was because they were displaced by the erecting of dream townhomes, the erecting of $1 million homes next to apartment buildings, the fact that we aren't making sure that we have a robust expansion of affordable housing in the 40th Ward. One of the places that I differ very strongly with the alderman is the fact that he doesn't think there should be a citywide strategy to address affordable housing, and I think that's wrong. When you don't have a citywide strategy to address affordable housing, what you're doing is saying that the rich should have the freedom of mobility and the poor should not.
Oh, that scared me.
Oh, my goodness.
Nice to know there's a buzzer now.
There's no fire. We're just on the air.
Okay, Diane, did you want to answer the question?
Sure.
Did you want to?
Now
We're
that there's
having
a
fun,
buzzer in
guys.
place, yeah.
Don't buzz me, please.
Don't make me get the sound effects out.
So I'm a CPS teacher. I'm an employee of the city, and I have to live in the city. So I agree with Andre and Ugo. I think housing in the 40th Ward, like many places in the city, is a problem. But being the only homeowner here, I can also say I think a lot of it's a result of the taxes. I have a personal firsthand knowledge. I'm a 30-year-plus homeowner who thought I could pay off my house and retire there. That's never going to happen now because of not just the property taxes, but all of our fees, regressive fines, everything else you can think of. So if you own a 2-flat, you used to be able to live in the 2-flat and use one of the apartments to pay the rent, or the mortgage or taxes. We now have such a ridiculous tax rate that no one can afford to live in the 40th Ward anymore. Even the young people moving in who are building these McMansions that we've referenced, There's no way that they can make a $3,000 or $4,000 a month mortgage payment and pay their taxes. We have affordable housing issues.
Right, got it. Okay, thanks, Diane. We're going to switch gears a little bit. We had quite a few questions that came in, and this was one of them that I thought was really interesting, and I wanted to pose it to all of you. Give me an example of a time that you took a personal risk to speak truth to power, regardless of whether you were ultimately successful. A time when you spoke truth to power. We're going to switch it up and start with Ugo.
Sure.
1 minute.
Actually, you were there with me, Samina. It was at a rally to stop the detentions of immigrants at the southern border, and to call out the atrocities of what has happened with the federal government. And at that event, I was the only one at that moment that called of the aldermanic candidates that are running in the 40th ward called for the abolition of ICE. A lot of people could think that me drawing attention to this federal issue, and from me as an aldermanic candidate, that it's silly, that it's something that is out of pocket, that we could never do. But I thought, as someone who's an immigrant from Nigeria, I knew it was a stance that I had to take, and I had to call to the issue of making sure we abolish ICE and stop the disastrous policies that we have towards our immigrant sisters and brothers who are trying to seek refuge by coming to the United States of America. And so I feel very strongly about that.
Diane?
Well, to begin with, I guess my last run for alderman in 2015. No one said it could be done. I was warned not to do it. I had people calling me from all levels of friends I know in the city saying, there's a problem, you shouldn't be doing it. And I kept saying, why? I think we have a right to do this, and I have a right to have a voice. Well, we were harassed verbally on the streets. We had Board of Elections called on us. We were 911 at polling places. I was threatened with lawsuits. People have done all kinds of things to us over the years, including sending inspectors into restaurants that support us. If we don't, all of us in this room and everywhere, speak truth to power, that faction of our society will win. And as a CPS teacher and a former social worker, I have no intention of letting the 1% of our country win over people's voice. Truth to power has to be done. You have to stand up. I run a group called the 40th Ward Alliance. We're a chapter of our revolution. We have speakers come in. We hash things out. We talk the talk.
Thank you, Diane.
Yeah, I was trying to narrow down as we were talking through it. Ever since when I was 17 years old, I'd gotten arrested because we had officers who were arresting my friends, 3 black individuals, and they assumed that I wasn't with them. So I had to raise my hand, and they immediately called me a Latin king. To being out now, right? Any of the rallies after the Van Dyke verdict, right? We actually occupied an ICE office downtown to be able to speak truth to power. And that was a different level because you're in there knowing you're in that office and you've got officers telling you to come out while we're holding children. I think it's incumbent upon all of us to speak truth to power. It's actually part of the reason why, as a hip hop person, I was drawn to it, listening to like Public Enemy, KRS-One, artists who clearly were talking about class and racial issues. So at every point when we're able to get out and yell against what we see clearly is injustice, it's the reason why I would argue we're all doing this.
Got it. Well, bringing it back to the aldermanic race. One of the things that we have been thinking about is there's been a lot of candidates over the years. Back, I guess it was 2011, when Amaya Pawar, James Kappelman ran as reformers. And what we've seen is those folks in particular are perceived, especially by the left, by progressives, as having been sucked into the machine. And so how will you not let that happen and stay accountable to your constituents? So we'll start with Diane.
Well, I'm glad you asked. It does seem like the machine always ends up winning in Chicago, and I think I'm strong enough to not succumb to that. It's important that City Council be returned to an actual legislative body. Right now, we've been dominated by mayoral prerogative, who uses money, TIF money, tax money, everything you can think of to cut deals with aldermen in the back scenes. So when you get something to the floor, it seems like you're a voice unto yourself. I'm not afraid of being a voice unto myself. I'm going to stand with the Progressive Caucus. I'm going to push for the council to appoint their own chairman. I'm going to push for council to not succumb to mayoral prerogative and deal cutting. We need elected school board. We need public voice and oversight in everything we do. And if a mayor says, then you're not getting things for your ward because you didn't side with me, I'm going to go door to door in my ward and I'm going to say, here's what the mayor said. Let's start a petition. Let's storm City Hall. We are entitled to services. Every neighborhood in the city needs to be heard.
Andre?
Yes. The question to me is interesting because I don't think anybody runs as a machine candidate. I don't think O'Connor's out here saying that he's clearly for the machine. I think we hear tons of people talking about wanting to end it, wanting to reform, being the most progressive. I think it's one thing to talk the talk and another thing to walk the walk. And the only way that anyone can be held accountable is by actually organizing the people on the ground that will then hold you accountable. So that's something 2-3 years ago when I started building up the Reclaim North chapter. It was focused specifically on the 40th Ward, putting together monthly chapter meetings, monthly social nights, and monthly canvases in the ward, not to seek approval, but to find other people who clearly understood that they had a stake involved and they wanted to be a part of something that was changing the government here. The only way anyone who's going to talk about being progressive can actually get that going is by organizing groups of people who will hold even that person accountable. Right. So the same way Alderman Rosa in the 35th has UN 35, it's actually building that before and during campaigns to get to that point.
Ugo?
I think when it comes to the issue of accountability, you have to understand that accountability has to go further than the saying that you will make sure that you do this or you will make sure that you do that. You need to ensure that you are surrounded and supported by people who believe in a radical transformation of the way that society works and the way that our economic system works and our government works. And so that's why I've chosen to align myself with folks like Chicago Democratic Socialists of America, who I know that, when push comes to shove and when I'm faced with tough decisions, that if I don't make the right decision, if I don't make the decision that works the best for Black, brown, and working class people, when it comes to my reelection campaign, they will not be right there with me, and I will lose. And so it's very important that we are serious about the issue of accountability and building a structure and a government in which you are co-governing alongside the people to build a future that works for everybody. Because it's not going to work if it's just you talking about, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. The powers of City Hall are strong, and you need the people to back you up.
Got it. Do you want to ask the last one? Do you want me to do that?
Go for it.
Okay, so this is a question actually for Andre and Ugo, and if Maggie was here, we'd ask it as well. Just to remind folks, we're talking with the 40th Ward Aldermanic candidates, Diane Daleiden, Ugo Carey, and Andre Vasquez. Maggie O'Keefe had a conflict. You're listening to the Left. We're at To the Left Radio on all platforms. Last question for Andre and Ugo. Diane, as she mentioned, ran in 2015 and got over 40% of the vote. What made you decide to run versus helping her bid?
That's a really good question. Thank you for asking. I think when you look at all the candidates in the 40th Ward, when you look at platform, there's not a lot of daylight between it, right? So I think everyone that's running pretty much has the same kind of agenda. I think the difference is approach, right? So when Diane and I met, it was like 2 years ago, we had coffee and kind of just talked about just the ward in general. And I think because of my understanding of power, my approach was to build up the kind of base that I was mentioning in the last question. Right, that I thought that was necessary to build power to do it. Then I started looking at all the different demographics, the numbers, and I think because of my personal take and the different parts of my story that people can relate to, being a CPS parent, being a child of immigrants, being somebody from the city who didn't just walk out of here with the political science degree, I thought there was more in talking to neighbors that they could attune to. And understanding how it's a nonpartisan race, more people running actually makes it harder for the alderman to get over 50%.
I think for me, it was I think I wholeheartedly agree with Andre, and that it was the approach. Again, I come from a community organizing background, and so, I've worked with organizations like Anakba in Chicago and in Fuerza del Sol and with Pilsen Alliance, and I think that the way that we go about organizing is inherently just much different. I spent a lot of my time not doing electoral organizing. And so a lot of it was based on issues and based on fighting for things like affordable housing and fighting for things like Clean Dream Act. And so I wanted to take all of these experiences and bring it to the 40th Ward. We have that last part of the campaign where we talk about interconnected struggle and how, again, we can't keep looking at ourselves as different sides of the city. I didn't see any other aldermanic candidate across the city talking about how we're going to bring the city together and stop the divide between black and brown and north and south. And I think that's an important job for every single alderman to be doing. And I wanted to make sure that we were pushing that message that what happened on the south side matters to the north side and vice versa.
Got it. That was Ugo Carey. We've got Andre Vasquez, Diane DeLayden, all candidates for the 40th Ward aldermanic race. You are listening to the Left. I'm Samina Mustafa.
I'm Shauna East.
And we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. I'm Samina Mustafa.
I'm Shauna East.
We're producing a show on WCPT Sundays at 1 o'clock.
What should we call it?
How about Smash the Patriarchy?
I like it, but that's a lot of pressure. What about left-leaning ladies?
What about womansplaining?
Yeah, but what about when we have guys on? What about Madigan's worst nightmare?
I think it's enough attention.
I got it. To the left.
I like that. That could work.
Tune in to the Left with Samina and Shauna on WCPT 820, Sundays at 1.
Do you want to deal with some of that?
I think Alderman O'Connor's still running late for the show.
Oh, we're back. We're back.
Oh.
And we are back.
Spicing it up.
What were you saying, Andre?
Hey, what was that?
You're listening to the Left. I'm Samina Mustafa.
Shauna East.
And we are talking to the 40th Ward candidates. They're running for alderman in Chicago. That's what we call our city council people. We call them aldermen. I know, it's weird. But anyway, the folks in the studio, Diane DeLayden, Ugo Carey, and Andre Vasquez, are challenging a longtime incumbent, Pat O'Connor, who has been in office so long that he was actually part of the Verdoli Act 29.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
The caucus of council members that were infamously rallied against the first and only elected black mayor in the city of Chicago. And it's interesting you said what you said before the break, Andre, that, sort of like nobody actually says they're part of the machine. But I got to say, there's some things that O'Connor said that kind of makes it clear he is perfectly comfortable with the power that he's aligned himself with. And let's talk a little bit about what's happened in the last, few weeks as it relates. It's been a really sleepy election season, you guys.
Yeah, nothing's happening.
Clearly
It's
not.
like,
Super quiet. Let's talk about what's happened with Alderman Ed Burke. There's been a federal probe. He's going to be, he's been indicted. And O'Connor has taken his place as head of the Finance Committee. So let's talk a little bit about that. If you are a 40th Ward constituent, you've got somebody who's got that seat of power, whether you like what he's doing with it or not, but you're going to potentially lose that influence in city council. How would you respond to a voter saying, we're going to lose that influence? We'll start with you, Ugo.
I don't think when I'm knocking on doors and talking to people about what happened with the alderman and him being pushed up to the finance to the chair of the finance committee, I don't hear anyone saying, "Oh man, if we vote him out, we're going to lose this seat of power. No one in the 40th ward is like genuinely concerned about losing that bit of power. What they are concerned about is actually building a transformational city council where they have an elected leader they can hold accountable and that listens to them and that it has reliable and accessible, constituent services, fights for affordable housing, and fights for the things that they actually want to see. The average voter is, again, not concerned with the city council power of their aldermen. I think people who have been here in the 40th ward for a very long time can feel like great, like who are supporters of the incumbent alderman. They feel excited about the fact that our alderman's going to have just a little bit more power, but the average resident in the 40th ward is not concerned with that.
Diane.
I must say, as a long-term resident myself, I've seen Pat grow in power. He's already vice chair of finance. It's not like he was missing out anything by not being, quote-unquote, the chair. Plus, Pat O'Connor has been head of education. He brought us charter schools and per-pupil budgeting and eventually school closures. And I can also say, as floor leader for 2 mayors, that's the Mike Madigan of City Council. He's not even concerned with this little bit more power he gets. What I am concerned with now is that workman's comp has been taken out of finance, and guess what's been put in? TIF money. TIF money is now in finance. So now they get to deal cut with billions of dollars that's taken away from our neighborhoods, schools, infrastructure. I would abolish TIF and feed it into the city budget so all people in Chicago could see where it's going to go without the deal cutting. But floor leader is the man who cuts all the deals. He goes behind the scenes. This is the power of city council, is being the floor leader and reaching out to everybody. This is just a little bit of more power that he has now.
Right. Andre?
Yeah, I would differ a little bit with Ugo's assessment. I've definitely talked at doors and heard people worry about clout or losing clout or what that may mean. My argument back is we don't know what that clout's going to mean because we have no idea who the next mayor is going to be. We have no idea what power that actually is. And if you want to look at what that clout's accomplished, look at selling off the parking meter deal when he was a floor leader for Daley. Look at where the TIF money is going right now as far as the Lincoln project. My conversation with everyone is the clout that you're talking about isn't helping you out. He may throw a couple $1 million at a certain school here or there, but the fact that he's sending $900 million to $1.5 billion dollars of our tax money over to a developer to then have property taxes be raised to make up that deficit shows you that that clout is not working for you. And I think we all know it's a changing of the guard. But when it comes to Burke, my argument's simple. Colleague for 35 years, was his vice chair. If you can tell me that Mike Pence doesn't know what Trump is doing, sure, you can buy that story. But if they've worked that closely hand in hand, the alderman is either unaware, asleep at the wheel, or complicit.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to switch to some Facebook questions. Do you have something, Shauna?
Yeah, I have one question, 1 minute response, and then we have a quick lightning round. This question is from Chris. How do you plan to continue to expand your voting block, not just in your ward, but in surrounding wards? And start with Andre?
Yeah.
1 minute.
Absolutely. I think we need to have programs in place citywide that actually promote civic education and actually set up town halls. That should be not dependent on the alderman. It should be expected across the city. If you want to engage and increase voters, people need to be informed. 6 years ago, I wouldn't know what ward I was in or what an alderman does. We knock on doors now. Most people still don't. In order to actually change that and affect people, they need to understand what their stake is, and we need to go out of our way to make it convenient for neighbors to learn that.
Dan?
In addition to what Andre said, I would also work with representation from our state government and our federal government. Our congressmen and our state representatives and state senators cover much more than individual wards. We do need to build power in regional areas, and we need to wield that power on a local, state, and national level. Our problems in the 40th Ward and all over the city are being shared by people all over the country right now. We have to work hand in hand with other aldermen. We have to work hand with state reps and state senators, and we must have a hand in a state central committee of our own party, the Democratic Party, and we've got to work with everybody all over the city. As a teacher, I can tell you there's cities in the school that are so ridiculously underfunded because of the per pupil budgeting that it's really criminally negligent. We need to help all neighborhoods recover from this type of deficit spending.
Ugo?
Could I actually get a repetition of the question because I'm not want to make
I
sure
don't
that I'm
have it
answering.
open right now.
Okay.
Sorry.
Because when they said your voting block, are they talking about?
How will you expand your base, like past your ward, basically? How will you expand it into other wards or outside of your own ward?
In that case, it's talking about like largely what they were talking about, bringing people into the process. So we talk a lot about co-governance on our campaign. That's the idea that it's not me going into city council, but that it's all of us with a seat at the table, and that means doing things like implementing a community-driven zoning process, so residents get a say in what kind of businesses and developments come into the ward, like they have in the 35th ward. It's also about implementing participatory budgeting, allowing residents to come in to come in and vote on infrastructure projects that they want to see happen in their ward. The reason that there's such low voter turnout, the reason that there is such low civic engagement in general in our ward is because things have always been done a certain way. They've always been done the machine style way. It's always been up to the aldermen to decide where all the money goes and how the ward is set up. And so if we implement these types of reforms and these changes, people will feel like they can be a part of the political and government process in the 40th ward.
Great, thank you. We're going to go very quickly now because we just have a few minutes left. This is the lightning round, so you are going to answer yes or no. Those are the only two options. The first question is, do you believe in an end to cash bail, Andre?
Yes.
Yes.
Ugo?
Yes.
Diane, we're going to say your name before you speak so that people know.
Yeah, right.
You said
Makes sense.
fast.
We're saving you time.
Do you believe in CPAC, which is Civilian
Yes.
Police Accountability Council? Andre?
Yes.
Ugo?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
Do you think we should be spending $95 million on the cop academy on the west side, Andre?
No.
Ugo?
No.
Diane?
No.
Ooh. Wow. How is anyone going to pick who to vote for in this ward, you
It's all
guys?
approach.
That's
This is
the-
right.
Okay, do you believe in to lift the ban on rent control in the 40th ward, Andre?
Yes.
Ugo?
Yes.
Diane?
Lift the ban, yes. Yes, sorry.
I'm going to ask, okay, next, participatory budgeting, yes or no, Andre?
Yes.
Ugo?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to go backwards this time just to get real wacky. Elected school board, yes or no, Diane?
Yes.
Andre?
Yes.
Ugo?
Yes.
Okay, one more question. TIF reform or abolishment? Or something else?
Yeah, so that's not a yes or no. That's like a
An answer. Simple
Yeah,
answer.
and Andre?
Reform.
Diane?
I can't see you pointing. Abolish.
And Ugo?
Abolition.
Wow, very spicy. Okay, and we have just a couple minutes, and I wanted to go around and just, if you could share your website or how people can plug in if they want to learn more. We'll start with Diane. Delighten.
I am Diane, Dianne, forward, FORWARD 40.com. You can also find me at Facebook at Diane, number 440.com, ward40.com, or excuse me, at Facebook. You know, the other thing is where our office is on Lincoln Avenue, 4919 Lincoln, and I answer my email personally, dianeforward40@gmail.com.
Great. Ugo.
Ugo Okere. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Ugo Okere40, UGO OKERE40. Our office is at 5333 North Lincoln Avenue. We just opened it up. If you want to come by, you can check out our office times on our Facebook page.
And Andre Vasquez.
Yep. They could find us at Andre 440th. That's ANDRE4040th.com. At Andre for 40th on all the social media streams, everything, platforms. Our office is at 5232 North Damon. Office hours are 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, Friday through Sunday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Phone number 312-888-5099. Call or text. Thank you.
Is that your cell phone?
That is my cell phone.
Nice.
Accessible. So we're doing over here.
Ugo is finger waggling
Sorry,
a la
what?
Bernie Sanders.
Sorry, website, Ugo2019.com. That's all.
Great.
there you go.
Well, we're so thankful for you guys coming all the way out to WCPT
Yeah, of
Studios
Thank you
on
for having
a
us.
Wait,
Sunday.
you have less than what? How many days left?
23 days
23.
left.
23. Okay. But early voting has begun
That's right.
at the Supercenter, and early voting will start in all 50 wards on February 11th, which is a week from tomorrow. And I think the early voting for site in the 40th is Budalong Woods Library, if I'm not
Perfect.
correct. Thank you to Diane DeLayden, Ugo Carey, and Andre Vasquez. Again, challenging Pat O'Connor, longtime incumbent in the 40th Ward. We were sorry to not have Maggie O'Keefe as part of this discussion, but she had a conflict. So we only have a few minutes left, Shauna and I, to close out the show. So, Shauna, what do we want to say about our upcoming show?
I don't know. Do we know what our upcoming shows are?
We're gonna surprise ourselves at some point.
Wild card, everyone. Tune in.
No. At some point in the next 2 weeks, we're actually trying to confirm this. We're really we're trying to get a former state rep, Letisa Wallace, on the show to talk about sexism on the left. So she's going to get back to us, but we're going to have her on in the next 2 weeks. Obviously, more municipal shenanigans. Because that's what's happening.
Yeah, nothing booked yet. We're a little behind, you guys, but we'll be prepared on the day of, I promise.
You know why we've been so busy is because we've got a big event coming up in the middle of March 16th. We've got our big live show and fundraiser. So you want to talk about
it's not going to be live where we're going to record it to post later, but you can be a part of the show by being there.
Yeah, exactly.
So please send $40. By the way, we pay for the airtime here. This pays for Ms. Lady B. This pays for the studio. This pays for all the staff. Like, we need the money, you guys. Like, what is going on? Seriously. I am so, I can't believe that $50 million or $20 million was raised for this stupid wall or whatever via GoFundMe. And us ladies can't get a couple $2 thrown to us via Patreon. Yeah. So anyways, become a member, part of our community, patreon.com/to-the-left-radio. You can send us $40 for your ticket to our fundraiser coming up at the Hideout to Secret Geek Society at Yahoo via PayPal or Shauna-East at Venmo. We're trying to open up as many payment methods as possible to make it easy for you guys to give us your money.
Yeah.
We couldn't have all of these wonderful people on to amplify their messages.
How are you guys going to fit all the 47th Ward candidates without the money?
Yeah, that would be tough. So that's why we stuck with the ward with fewer candidates, but an exciting one.
We thought it would be spicy, and it was.
Yeah, you guys are very spicy.
But I wanted to also take a moment to give some thank yous. Of course, we want to thank Ugo, Andre, and Diane for being here. We want to thank Ms. Lady B, our producer, and our production assistant, Anna. Thank you so much for your work. We couldn't do this without you. We want to thank our host committee, which is growing for our upcoming fundraiser, Sheila Garland Olanaran, Julie Lehrman, and Stuart Abram. Jackrabbit for all of his help, and all of those who are at home amplifying our message using the hashtag To the Left. That's TO the Left.
And two big event notices for folks who are listening. You can actually catch me and one of our guests a couple of weeks ago, Sheila Garland Olanaran. We're doing a Medicare for All Barnstorm. That's happening next Saturday.
I'm going.
You are coming? Okay, cool. It's going to be hosted by me, Martise Chisholm, and Sheila of National Nurses United, and Lupita Carrasquillo, who's also with Jane Addams Senior Caucus. And then on February 16th, we're going to have a panel with Letisa and David Orr on the evolution of the Chicago machine and black politics. So all that information is on IllinoisForAll.com. We are going to be back next week with a show, which will be a surprise.
One demand I have for all of our guests, though, is will you go on our live stream and answer the questions that all the folks have for you on our live stream?
Yeah, so
or
please do that.
Someone from your campaign.
Yeah. So,
lightning round, yes.
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 Okay, everyone, post your questions to our lovely guests on our live stream, and that's facebook.com/to-the-left-radio.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Lady B. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
The preceding program, To the Left, was sponsored by To the Left Media.